So you want to know how I plan these epic motorcycle rides? Well, then stay tuned. What's up, my biker friends, and welcome back to another video. A lot of you guys have requested that I would talk about how I actually plan all those rides. What are the steps that I'm going through? I've never really done that on the channel. Today, I'm going to talk about how I plan my epic motorcycle trips.
Yes! Ha fatto militare il culo.
Before we get into the how part, I would like to talk about the why. Why I plan all these, so you understand the backgrounds behind it. And before we get into that, it seems that there is sort of two different camps of riders. There's the one camp that does very, very little planning. They have a general idea where they're going and they basically plan the routes on the spot. And then there's the second camp that plans everything meticulously, every route that they're taking, every place they're going to stay, everything they're going to look at. And that's the camp that I fall into. So why do I go through all that effort of doing it when it'd just be easier to just travel and just go with the flow? Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing that is because I have only a select number of days that I ride the motorcycle. So I want to make sure that in those, let's say 10 days that I have in the trip, that I maximize my riding experience. And that means that everything that I can organize up front that I don't have to do while I'm riding gives me a lot larger time window to actually ride the motorcycle. And if you've seen the channel quite a bit, you know I like riding longer distances. I like riding for 10, 12 hours a day. And if I want to do that, I have to take all the other distracting stuff away that you would normally have to do if you don't organize the stuff up front. The second reason why I'm doing that is if it's an area that I haven't been to, I just want to make sure I hit all the highlights. It's like you visiting a new town. I'm a tourist like that too. I want to see the top highlights. I want to see the top sites. If you're going to a town for the very first time, you want to see all the things. You want to check them off the list and you want to see it for yourself. And I'm the same way when it comes to motorcycle travel. If I'm traveling to an area where I might not go again to in many, many years, I just want to make sure I got the best stuff and I got to see the best stuff, the best routes. I got to see the best sites. And there's another side effect to actually planning upfront because it gets me really excited about the tour. I can think about the tour and the places I want to travel to. It's usually months before I actually get to travel. So it's really nice when I'm sort of in my daily grind to think about these things, to plan these things on the weekend, and then, you know, finally being able to ride a tour like that. So let's talk about the how part. How do I go about it? It's absolutely not rocket science. It's just a little bit of elbow grease and work. Now, there are actually shortcuts to it. If you don't want to go through the entire effort of sort of planning your own tours, one way would be to actually join a travel group. There's a lot of companies out there that offer travel. You just sign up, especially if you don't want to ride by yourself. You travel in a group and it's basically a pre-planned tour and the tour guide that just takes you along. That's actually what I did the first few rides, and not because I can't actually design my own tour, but I just did that for the company. That's also how I met Thomas, that I'm riding almost every tour now with. We met in the Pyrenees Mountains on a tour like that. So there's something to it if you don't want to go through all the labor and effort. That's the simplest way. It costs you a bit more money because someone else is doing the work and you have to pay the tour guide. There's a next step down. Some companies actually offer you the tour package. They will also book hotels for you if you want to. So that's the next step down. And the third step down is just getting a GPX route that you can download for free. In some cases, you can get it for free. In some cases, you have to pay a little bit of money because people put a lot of work into their tours. And I've actually bought packages like that myself. When I didn't have the time, I didn't want to put the work into it. I paid the money and did that. And I also put a package together for you guys. If you're interested in some of my routes, I used some of the downtime that I had collating all the road books and the GPX routes and then put them in packages. Quite a bit of work to put this in there. So I'm not going to put it out for free. And it's actually a good chance if you want to support the channel that you can purchase the route if you so wish. Let's get into the planning if you want to do it all by yourself. Now, the first thing that I do is do my research. So I just kind of get the lay of the land, understand where everything is and understand where the highlights are, what the best routes are, and so on. So let's use France as a good example. This is the 2019 tour in France, as parts of Switzerland, but it's primarily focused on France. I think that tour, even looking back on it, I think you will have a hard time finding more variety and more excitement packed into 8 full long riding days than on this tour. Now, the benefit in the France tour was that it wasn't the first time that I was going back to France, so I actually knew the place. So sometimes if you don't know the place, you have to approach it in a different way. Here, I had the benefit of actually having been to many of the tracks, so I knew what I was putting in there. But let's say you don't know the place. So if you're in the Alps and you want to hit some of the major passes, it's good to have something like a list of alpine passes. So basically got a hold of a list of the top 50 alpine passes. And what I did is I put little dots on the map. It's just a layer that I put into Garmin Basecamp. That's a tool that I'm using to plan my routes. So there's a layer on there that basically has the major passes in the Alps. I did the same things with the balcony roads. The balcony roads are these small, tiny, marvelous engineered roads that they're just kind of put into the side of a mountain. They're usually not very long, but I was really excited about seeing these roads. And I actually got the hint from a website called dangerousroads.com. They actually have a list of balcony roads. And that's the first time that I actually got to see some of the routes. So they have a list, and if you have that list, I did the same thing, and I put these balcony roads on a layer on a map. So with all these highlights in there, then you add all the gorges or the highlights that you want to see into layers on the map. And then it's really very simple. It's just connecting the dots to basically plan your route through the highlighted areas. So then you need to figure out the total tour length. So if you have, let's say, 10 days to travel, and you an average of 300 kilometers a day, then the total tour length is going to be about 3,000 kilometers. So I usually plan the tour as one long track that is then 3,000 kilometers long. So once I have that, it gives me an overview of all the things that I can expect to see. So normally I have more points of interest than I can cover in a single tour. So you kind of have to make a choice in what you do and then sort of fine tweak the road. Once I have that, I start putting it into segments and then looking for accommodation. I'll talk about that in a minute. Accommodation, what I use and what I pick. Smaller segments. So if I got 10 days, 10 segments, 10 days that I'm riding in. Now there's also something to be said about how you plan your routes. Now there's two things that I have as a tip. The first thing is I wouldn't spread the different hotel accommodations too far apart. On my later routes, I actually try to not to get somewhere in just a straight line. Usually I try to kind of squiggle around a little bit. And that helps you if you're pre-planning something and let's say there's bad weather or you have to change your tire and you have to go to the shop. If you're planning hotels and you have to go the 300 kilometers in a straight line, then that's really pushing the time. So if you have a little bit of loops in there, that allows you to skip some of the planned routes if something unexpected happens. So you can plan for the unexpected. That's what I do now. I actually used to do 3 different trip lengths even. I had a normal length and 2 shorter versions just in case I would encounter bad weather, so I can still go with a planned route, but a shorter version of that. The second tip that I have is, especially looking at high alpine passes or specific routes, sometimes traveling a mountain pass from the other direction is just as exciting as covering it from one direction. So on some of these really great passes that I like traveling from both sides, you can go back the same pass. You don't have to do it on the same day, but you can loop back onto the same way and it still experiences like a completely different new pass. So I do that a lot, especially with certain highlights that I come back to them. And I usually come back to them a day later. So if you have bad weather, you want to take photographs, it gives you a chance to come back another day and hopefully have better weather conditions and see the same site in a different light. Let's talk about accommodation and things I look out for when I book my places. I try to use booking.com for several reasons because it's just simpler to have it all in one space. I also try to look for places that allow me to do last minute cancellations. A lot of times, as we've seen, things fall through, something happens. So if you have one place where you can cancel all your hotels, it makes life a lot easier. So for Norway, I had all my hotels booked on booking.com and it was quite easy to just cancel that. It was a lot more work and a lot more pain in the ass to do this with the ferries. You have to contact the customer support. And it's the same thing if you're booking individual hotels. It just takes a bit longer to go through the communication. So booking.com is awesome. I know that the hotels have to pay a certain fee to that, but as a user, as someone using it, it's really awesome to use booking.com. Also helps you to find places on the map. When I talked about the different segments, I can just look at the map and see what's actually located really well. If you're in the Alps, there are a lot of places that are actually winter sport areas in the winter. So they have a lot of capacity to accommodate a lot of people. Usually the summertime is the downtime season. So you can get pretty good deals and really nice hotels in the Alps if you're close to any kind of skiing resort. Also, you can locate yourself really high or somewhat remote because it's really easy to get there on a motorcycle. The one thing that I'm always looking for the accommodation is that they have a restaurant or it's a nearby restaurant to the place. Now, when I get there and I get there very late on those long days, I want to make sure that I can get something to eat without actually getting back on the motorcycle to find a restaurant to go and eat something. So I don't do bed and breakfasts for that particular reason, unless that is very close to a downtown, an old town where I can actually walk to a restaurant. That's the one thing I'm always looking out for. Like I said early on, I try to maximize the time a day that I can ride my motorcycle. So if I'm arriving late at a hotel, I want to make sure that I can get something to eat. Sometimes though, if you're arriving really late, which we have in the past, those restaurants close sometimes it's at 8 or 9. So you can't just roll in at 11 at night. That makes sense to call up front. But overall, it gives you a very, very long time window to do your travel. And depending on your budget, there's a huge range of places that you can pick from. And of course, the cheapest way is finding a campground all the way to really nice luxury hotels. I'm usually somewhere in the middle on the lower range. I don't need a lot of luxury around it, but I want to have a bed and a shower. And I definitely want something to eat at night. And the most important thing is the restaurant, because one of the first things that we do is when we hop off the bike is to grab a beer or two. And then we hit the showers and then we get something to eat. And yeah, if you had 2 beers, I don't want to hop on the bike again to find some place to eat. So guys, to recap it, that's how I plan my routes. I do my research. I just want to make sure I have all the highlights that I can travel in the route. I also want to make sure I extend the day as long as I can, because I like to ride for a very long day. So I don't have to worry about finding a place to stay when I'm in the middle of a sundown ride. And I make sure that I pick the right places to stay, so I don't have to travel away from that place, that I have clean bed, a shower, and definitely a place to eat there. So if you are interested in looking at my tours that I'm making available through Teespring, you can just download. It's a download link. Purchase the link. What I have in there is not just a GPX route, but I usually have a road book, and in that road book, I sort of have the highlights listed in there that you can travel in a single day. You can write it the way it is, or you can just use it as a template to work off that template to do your own tour. I also have accommodation recommendations. I usually put the prices in that we paid at the time that we were there to get an idea how much we spend and where we stayed. And of course, there's tons of video materials. So if you look at the videos and see the area and that we traveled in a different tour, you can link that tour with the video to get an impression of what it is to ride some of these routes. Okay guys, thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this useful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you have comments and tips on how you plan your routes, it'd be really cool to hear about it in the comments section, guys. I see you in the next video. Until then, ride safe and stay awesome.